Well, the defendant's in the courtroom. Everyone's here. Are we ready to go forward?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are there any issues or problems that need to be addressed before I send for jurors?
Nothing to say.
Okay. Bring the jury in. I hope everyone had a good lunch. Did the defense ever end up with suitable accommodations?
Yeah, we've been working with the company, Judge, and they've made it right for us.
I'm glad. I'm glad. That was hard way to live.
That's all right for the jury. What still?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're ready to resume the trial. I hope your lunch was pleasant. We are ready to call our next witness, please.
They would call Winston Milling.
Have a seat, please.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury by telling them your name and then spelling it so the court reporter gets it correct?
My name is Winston Milling, W-I-N-S-T-O-N, Milling, M-I-L-L-I-N.
And Mr. Milling, can you tell the jury just generally where do you live?
Outside of Atlanta,
Okay. And where do you work?
Home Depot.
Okay. Where do you work at Home Depot? We've heard a lot of discussions about different offices and things like that. Which one do you work in currently?
I work in the main building called the SSC, Service Support Center.
Okay. And what is it? Do you know the address of that location?
2455 Paces Ferry Road.
And is that the building where Little Apron Academy is actually right there with it?
Yes.
How long have you worked with Home Depot?
Since 2011, so coming up on 5 years now.
Okay. And what is your job there?
I'm a software developer working on web applications for the store.
Okay. Have you, since you started work there in 2011, is that the type of work you've done?
Yes,
Do you know the defendant in this case, Justin Ross Harris?
I do.
Okay. Could you identify him by where he's sitting?
He's in the middle of the defendant's bench.
Okay. Your Honor, ask the record to reflect that witness has identified Mr. Harris.
It may.
And you and Mr. Harris have actually been friends for years, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury where y'all met and under what circumstances?
We met at the University of Alabama. We were both MIS graduates there.
Okay. And what's MIS stand for?
Management Information Systems.
Now, did you go straight from high school to college?
I did.
Okay. When you met Mr. Harris, was he straight out of high school to college, or was he a little bit older than you?
He's a little bit older, but I don't recall his direct path.
Okay. So you just knew when you met him in college, he was a little bit older than you.
Yes.
Okay. When you knew him or had met him in college, was it through the same major?
Yes.
Okay. And back in college, was this something where you guys would hang out back then, or was it more of just you saw him in class and things of that nature?
Saw him in class. Occasionally may hang out in the buildings where we studied. More so.
All right. Can you tell the jury a little bit about how did you guys come to be here? Did y'all have another mutual friend that you went to college with too?
Yes, Alex Hall.
Okay. So how did all three of y'all end up coming to Atlanta to work?
We all had an internship with Home Depot in 2011.
Okay. And is this something where you guys all came in and interviewed at the same time?
No, I believe we interviewed separately for the most part. We may have been in the same interview group, but I don't recall specifically.
Okay. Were there a lot of people from Alabama that came to do internships at Home Depot?
There were, yes.
Okay. Can you even estimate how many?
If there were, say, 50 interns there, Alabama was probably 20 or so of them.
So they recruited pretty highly from your university, correct?
That year, yes.
Okay. Now, was that internship in 2011 or was that before?
It was the summer of 2011.
Okay. And so after that, did you go directly from the internship to actually a paying job with Home Depot?
I accepted an offer, but completed one more semester at Alabama.
So when was it you actually moved to the Atlanta area?
February of 2012.
And then did you started working in the same job or same capacity that you work in now?
Yes.
Did the defendant also start working for Home Depot?
I believe so, yes.
And within your own your workplace and what type of job you did Alex actually start working with you as well?
We were in a very similar area, yes. Not directly together at that point.
Okay. Were you and Alex in the same building?
Yes.
Now, was he in your building or a different building?
He may have been there when we started, but I primarily knew him being in the tree house is what they call it. It's across the street, across the interstate.
What type of job did he do? What was his job title and generally the duties as it differed from what you did?
We were all software developers. I think he worked with the .com division, so slightly different. We worked on internal applications. He worked primarily with, say, the customer-facing applications.
So you guys were basically, I guess, within Home Depot working with website or working within the, the information technology system, and then he was doing more out, I guess, being, when you say facing, selling Home Depot to the community.
Yes, so he'd be working on HomeDepot.com.
All right. When you moved to Atlanta, did you at some point become closer, more friendly with the defendant?
Within the last 2 years leading up, yes.
Okay. Within the last 2 years leading up into the incident, why you know
Yes.
where you're for. Okay. Back when you met him at college, was he already married?
I believe so, but yes, I believe so.
And did you ever go to his house back then or anything? Do you
Not back
remember?
then, no.
Did you know his wife back then?
Not that I recall.
When you came to Atlanta, you said a couple of years before this. Was this before Cooper was born, or it was after Cooper was born that you became closer to the defendant?
It was after Cooper was born.
And what was it that kind of brought y'all together, and why y'all started hanging out more?
It was similar social circles, and then we started hanging out more heavily when we were talking about starting a business together.
And when was it that you guys, I say you, we'll talk about who all was involved, but how long had you guys been looking at starting this business before leading up to Cooper's death?
It was at least probably about 6 months leading up to that point, I believe.
And so who all was going to be involved with this business?
Ross, myself, Alex Hall, and Jason Howdo.
Now, did all of you work for Home Depot, or was there one of you who did not at the time?
When we started talking, all of us worked for Home Depot.
And did one of the four actually leave Home Depot?
Yes.
Okay, and who was that?
Jason Howdo.
What was the name of the development company, or the company that you guys were going to try to form?
The final name was Ninth Hour Development.
Generally, tell the jury, how far along did you guys get with developing this business before Cooper's death?
We had formed the LLC and were in the process of negotiating the first contract.
Now, aside from work and working on the business, how often would you say that you would hang out with the defendant outside of work?
Leading up to it, ended up being every couple weekends at least.
And what type of things would you guys do?
Hiking, Stone Mountain, Peninsula Mountain, Marietta Square Festival, kind of outdoor activities.
Would he sometimes bring his family?
Yes.
Do you remember, well, let me ask you this. How many times had you actually met Leanna?
Handful of times, a couple. Probably 10, give or take a couple.
Okay. So sometimes around 10 over the couple of years.
Over the last few months leading up to
Oh, okay.
this.
Over the last few months. Okay. And how many times had you actually met Cooper?
Anytime I was seeing Leanna, it was to be the same for Cooper.
Did you ever hang out with just the defendant and Cooper? Was it usually Leanna, Cooper, and Mr. Harris?
I do recall probably once or twice where I hung out with Ross, myself, and Cooper.
In fact, was it you that moved in late May, or was it Alex, like May 31st of 2014?
Of 2014?
Yes.
Alex.
Okay. You guys remember you and the defendants, and I don't know if there were other people involved, actually spending time moving him in Midtown, him being Alex?
Possibly. I don't recall if I actually helped with the move or not. I probably did, but in minor capacity.
So would you remember if you did or did not, if the defendant gave you a ride home afterward? I'm going to assume no, considering it was over 2 years ago. Okay. Now, as far as you could tell from your interactions with the defendant and I guess the minimal interactions with his wife and with Cooper, did they appear to have a normal family relationship?
As far as I can tell, yes.
And as far as you can tell, he seemed like a loving father and go out of his way to show off his son?
Yes.
And as far as you knew, I mean, were you originally from Alabama?
Yes.
Okay. And was the defendant originally from Alabama?
I believe so.
As far as your group of friends, as far as you could tell here, were you and Alex, as far as the defendant's circle of friends, probably some of his closest friends?
Cause for speculation.
Based on his
His friend.
experience. Okay. Did you know of any friends that he had locally that we hang out with more often than you and Alex?
I don't believe I crossed any friend groups.
Okay. So basically the defendant that you knew, that was from what you would see him day to day at work and from hanging out on occasions and things like that and running your business, correct?
Correct.
Now, I'm going to turn your attention to, well, first, let me ask you this. In the interactions that you had with Cooper, did he seem like a normal child?
Yes.
Walking?
Yes.
Talking?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean talking, not like, hey, how are you doing?
Yes.
He was verbal.
Yes.
Did you notice in the month or two leading up to his death that he'd had a growth spurt and he was a little bit taller?
He was larger, yes.
As far as the defendant and what he voiced to you about his job at Home Depot, at any point in that month or so leading up to it, did he voice unhappiness with his job?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Do you remember him actually interviewing or saying he was interviewing with Chick-fil-A to get a different job?
He may have mentioned it.
Okay. And you may or may not know this. Did you know that he was upset because he got rejected for that job back in May of 2014?
I don't recall.
Now turning your attention to, I guess, the work day and things like that. When you guys were at work, even though you were in different buildings, did you guys communicate a lot?
We communicated online, yes.
Okay. And what type of internet or online application would you guys use to communicate?
Google Hangouts.
And explain to the jury how that works. Some of us may know, some of us may not. How does Google Hangouts work, and what type of devices can you use to communicate with that?
Sure. Google Hangouts, primarily using your Gmail account or the Google account to speak with your real name or whatever name you give them. You can use pretty much any device, browser, phone, otherwise internet connected.
Okay. And was this something that was dedicated to Home Depot, or was it just your own personal Google Hangout? Now, what was your work schedule like? Do you have a regular schedule?
Fairly regular, yes.
Okay. Generally, what times?
At that time, it was generally about 9 to 6, give or take half an hour.
Was Alex's similar to yours?
At the time, we were on the same team, yes.
Now, the defendant, was his schedule different in any shape, form, or manner?
I believe so, but we interacted mostly around lunchtime and through communicator Hangouts.
All right, let me ask you this. Given with your job and how it worked and his, Was his job schedule, was it more flexible about what he could do?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and what is the difference between the two jobs and why his would be more flexible than yours?
We were under different management, and I just believe that .com's management was a little more flexible about when people could come in and come out as long as work was getting performed.
Did the defendant ever tell you y'all needed to come work with him because it was a lot easier over there?
He may have, yes.
Now, I know you talked about lunch. Did y'all ever go to breakfast together or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Did you know that, or were you familiar about his schedule as far as dropping off his son in the mornings, or how often he did that, or is that something you really didn't know a lot about?
At the time, no, I was not aware of it.
Okay. Tell the jury a little bit about what was y'all's, like I guess a lot of people who, who work in the same area, what was your lunch schedule, or how did y'all plan lunch during the day?
Generally on hangouts, we just talk about where we may want to eat. There were a few places that we went to regularly. A Mexican restaurant called Taco Sevilla, as well as Publix being the primary two.
And the taco place you're talking about, is that what y'all referred to in the chats as TLB?
TLB, yes.
You guys ate there a lot, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that you, Alex, and Mr. Harris went out to lunch every day?
Nearly, at that time, yeah.
It'd be unusual if y'all didn't go out to lunch, right?
Yes.
When you went to lunch, what kind of car were you driving at the time?
It should have been the Chevy S10 small pickup.
Okay, so a pickup truck.
Yes.
Would that in any way affect who drove to lunch? Would you
Yes.
ever drive?
No.
Okay, and why not?
Only had 2 seats, really.
Okay. Now, as far as the defendant and Mr. Hall, what types of cars did they have?
4-door vehicles. I think Ross had a SUV, small SUV style.
The small Hyundai Tucson?
I don't know the make and model.
I keep saying Hyundai, and I know that's not how you pronounce it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Do you remember what kind of car Alex had?
It was a little sportier type 4-door car. I don't remember the make and model.
Okay, I know it's been a while, so it wasn't an SUV or anything like
No.
that. It's more like a sedan.
Yes.
When you would go to lunch, who would drive?
It was a toss-up between Alex Ross and when Jason was there. Jason.
When Jason was working at Home Depot?
Yes.
Okay. How long had he been gone?
I don't recall exactly. It may have been a couple months since he left out.
And so at that point, it was basically either Mr. Harris or Alex were the ones driving.
Yes.
Okay. And would you guys, do you know if they would try to rotate or how that would, like one person would drive one day, one would drive the other?
It would just come up in the conversation for the day, and it would just kind of naturally decide itself.
So there were a lot of times when the defendant would actually drive to lunch. Okay. And do you remember, I guess, did you have a chosen seat? Did you usually get in the front, the back, or did it just depend?
It just kind of depended.
Nobody jumped and called shotgun every time?
We played that every once in a while, but I don't
Okay.
think it was any consistency.
Okay. So when the times you would sit, when you were in the car seat, or in the car, would you see the car seat that was in there?
Yes.
Okay. Was the car seat pretty obvious to anybody in the car?
It was in the center of the back seat, if I remember correctly.
Right. And the center, if it was rear facing, I guess if a child was sitting in it, the child's head would be up almost between the two seats, correct? The driver and the passenger.
I want to say it was a forward-facing seat. I don't remember if it was rear-facing.
Okay. Do you remember him ever changing forward and rear facing?
I do not remember.
Do you remember the last 2 weeks up until Cooper's death that it was the rear facing car seat?
I don't recall.
Okay. Let me show you a photograph real quick and see if this refreshes your recollection. Milling, just showing you what's already been admitted as State's Exhibit 35. Can I ask you if you recognize this?
I recognize the seat, yes.
Okay. And is that same similar condition as the car seat was in the couple of weeks leading up to Cooper's death?
I don't recall how it was in the car, I just remember the seat.
Okay. You remember that being in the car at some point,
Yes.
though, correct? And you would agree that that car seat's visible to anybody in the car?
I suppose so.
Now, the days that I guess you would ride with either Alex or Mr. Harris, you would obviously, while you're going to lunch, just talk and banter about and just discuss things.
Yes.
Okay, and like what type of things would you talk about?
Just about anything. A lot of times it was involving work or something we'd seen on Reddit or anything, really.
And it was the same type of drive, no matter if it was defendant driving or Mr. Hall, same discussion, same types of things, correct?
I'd say so, yes.
Okay. And while you're traveling on the occasions Mr. Harris would drive, he didn't have any problems hearing the discussions or was physically impaired to be able to carry on these discussions while he drove, was he?
He is impaired in one ear.
Yeah.
I do not recall which ear, though.
Okay. And we know about that. What I'm saying is when you're driving in the car, did he appear to ever have a problem talking or need any type of assistance as far as when he's just sitting in the car talking with you guys?
Not that comes to memory.
Okay. Now, aside when he's not in the car, other times, would you sometimes try to talk into which other, I know you don't remember which side, but into the ear that was, I guess, not damaged?
I recall having conversations where he'd purposely sit in such a way that would be advantageous for conversation.
I got you. During the time, I know we talked about the defendant's, his schedule being more flexible than yours and saying that maybe it was you guys should work over there because it was easier. Did he ever seem stressed out about his job or anything, about having to work too much or anything like that?
Nothing that sticks out.
And especially like leading up to the day of the incident, did he appear, or was he complaining about being stressed and having to stay up late working or anything of that nature?
No, not to me.
He seemed normal leading up to
Yes.
this. So when you guys would go to lunch, I guess if Alex was driving, you guys would leave the headquarters and drive over and pick him up at his location, Treehouse.
Correct.
Okay, and that's pretty short distance between the two?
A couple minutes.
Okay. And you talked about going to Publix and TLV. Now, I'm not sure exactly where TLV is. Do you know where is that located?
It's up South Cobb Drive, probably about 5 or 10 minutes from the office.
Okay, so that's a little bit further
So
away.
not South Cobb, Cobb Parkway.
Okay.
Cobb, to get mixed in my head.
I understand. So if you go to like Publix or something like that, that'd be a lot closer to go eat there. And again, from Treehouse or from y'all's office, from there to that Publix, a couple minutes.
Yes.
I'm going to turn your attention to the day of the incident we're here for, okay? That day, had you and the defendant and Alex made any plans for that evening after work?
Yes, we were going to go see a movie.
Okay. And what movie were you going to go see?
I don't recall which movie it was.
Okay. Do you remember whose idea it was to go see the movie?
Normally, I'd say it would have been mine or Alex. I see generally a lot more movies than most.
Okay, so generally it would have been one of you two's ideas unless something out of the ordinary was there and Mr. Harris decided he wanted to suggest it.
Objection, that's been,
It is.
It is.
I'll rephrase it. Sorry, Judge. Would it be out of the ordinary for the defendant to suggest going and seeing a movie?
I don't think so.
Okay. But it would be more common that you or Alex would be?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you talked about the, well, let me ask you this. When did you decide, had y'all decided definitively to go to the movies? Was it that day or the evening before?
I believe it was that day.
And what time a movie were you guys going to go see?
I want to say it was around 5 o'clock, give or take maybe 30 minutes.
Okay. And what theater were you guys going to go to?
There's an AMC right near the office.
Yeah, is it Cumberland Parkway?
Cumberland can get you there. I just don't remember the cross streets. I just know how to get there, kind of thing. It's near the mall, right there, Cumberland Mall.
Okay. And you remember talking to the police, I guess, a couple years ago about this incident?
Yes, after the movie, when we hadn't heard nor seen Ross, I did go to his apartment.
You remember telling them that it's a straight shot down Cumberland Parkway. It runs right into the movie theater.
You have to take a ride at the mall to get to there.
Take a right at the mall? Oh, from Cumberland, leaving Treehouse.
You hit the mall, you have to take a right, and then it's pretty well a straight shot to the theater from there.
Okay. And what is the road that you take a right on that's a straight shot?
I do not recall the name.
By chance, Cumberland different than the Parkway, Cumberland Boulevard?
Quite possibly.
Okay. Let me just show you if I showed you a map of the area, would it help assist you?
I could pick out where everything is. I just don't know the street names as well.
Yes, sir. Okay, I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit 228. Okay, showing you State's Exhibit 228. Looking at Cumberland Parkway, where the treehouse is this the other road that you were talking about? Okay, so is that Cumberland Boulevard?
That is, yes.
Okay. And I'm just going to display this to the jury just real briefly. I'm not going to put it on a piece where but looking at that, the treehouse being located here, you come up Cumberland Parkway, and then when you're describing the straight shot, it was on Cumberland Boulevard that would take you around here and over to the movie theater, just right on that road, correct?
Yes.
And is that the route you would have taken?
Yes.
Kind of turning your attention back to, I know you guys talked about chatting and things like that. Do you remember what your name would have been in Google Hangouts and things like that?
It would have been my own name, Winston.
Okay. All right. I'm going to show you what a mark for identification purposes is State's Exhibit 331. Mr. Milling, I'm going to show you what a mark for for identification purposes is State's Exhibit 331. Looking at this document, do you remember when this happened? You went back and reviewed some of your chats and the Google Hangout conversations and things of that nature?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to turn your attention to State's Exhibit 331. I'm just going to show you, just to make sure we get it clear. Looking at, starting from the back page, reading from 6/17/2014, June 17, 2014. Do you recognize the names on this chat, or the usernames?
I recognize the email addresses, yes.
Okay. And is this, looking at it going forward, I know these things read kind of weird from bottom to top, it is now from back and forward. Looking at these, is this how the Google Hangout chats, how you communicated, or are these the actual chats between you, Mr. Abdo, Alex, and the defendant leading up from the 17th through the 18th of June 2014?
Looks characteristic of what we talk about, yes.
Okay. And would this be, did you actually print out a copy for the police as well and turn something over to them? Or
I believe I emailed a copy.
Okay. And if you look at this, at some point when, kind of jumping ahead just to set the timing on this, did you guys actually try to message the defendant while you were in the movie that the movie was starting?
Yes.
So looking at states 331, where it says, if you message movie starting, it says 21:19:47. So computing that into, I guess, normal people time, that would be 9:19, correct? That's what that would read.
That's what I would read, but that may not be time corrected.
And so just to kind of set the stage for what the times would be, the movie was at 5:19 would have been when the movie started, correct?
Roughly, yes.
So these times would be about 4 hours ahead of time from what it actually was.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
UTC.
Okay. And just looking at it quickly, we read through the last couple of pages of messages, just kind of to yourself real quick and let me know if that refreshes your memory and is an accurate copy of the chats between y'all leading up to the movie, discussing lunch, the movie, things of that nature.
It seems roughly about what we spoke about.
Let me just ask you this. And so, you know if this is the right time to introduce it or not. Do you know for sure if that's exactly the same thing or not?
Without having seen it in 2 years, this looks to be what we spoke about, yes.
All right. Well, Your Honor, I would tender States Exhibit 331.
No objection.
Admitted.
Now, Mr. Milling, we had talked about I'd ask you whose idea it was to go to the movie, okay? You turn your attention back to the chats, starting on page 26. It says page 26, top right, the last page. On June 17th, there is a message in the group chats after discussing pedals and things of that nature. That would have been 23, so that would have been 7/11/59, 7 p.m. From Ross Harris 00@gmail.com. Is that the defendant's website or his email address and what he used to identify himself on Google Chats?
I believe so. Google Chat doesn't actually show the email address; it just shows the name associated with it. But
I
yes,
got you. So that would be him, though, responding.
yes, I assume so. Yes,
And he stated, y'all want to go see 22 Jump Street this week, correct?
yes,
And then when you're texting, you get some messages in between while you're conversing, correct? Where you may not be speaking exactly on topic at the second after you send that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Looking at, I guess a minute later, Alex responded to that on the 17th that evening, and I'm not going to go into the exact language, but he says, F yes, let's go see it at AMC right there.
yes.
And then above that, the defendant actually says, yep, tomorrow. Okay. So whose idea was it to go to the movie initially?
Looks like Ross's.
I'll probably we'll leave this up here, so I'll probably have to show it to you again in a second, okay? When you guys were going to go to the movies, how were y'all all going to get there? Were y'all carpooling or driving separately or something different?
Driving separately.
So Mr. Harris would have gone from his location there, and you and Alex would have left your location.
Correct.
Now, was anybody else going to join you and the guys at the movie?
My wife was, yes.
And where was she coming from?
She would have been coming from the house at that time.
And where did y'all live?
Out near Douglasville, Georgia.
And the defendant, do you know where he lived? Had you been to his condo?
I have, yes.
Okay. Now, does he live closer to you than you to the Home Depot area and all that?
He lives much closer than I do.
Was it still not like a 5-minute drive away? It was a little bit further than, say, the movie theater or this or that. It was a distance further.
Yes.
So can you estimate about how long it would take for him from his house to get over to that Chick-fil-A area, Little Apron?
15, 20 minutes, depending on traffic.
That afternoon when you left, did you actually get to the movie theater?
Yes.
Okay, and about what time did you get there?
I don't recall exactly. I've been trying to usually get to movies at least half hour before.
Okay. And, well, this was a Wednesday, correct?
Yes.
And you guys were going to the 5 p.m. movie?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't want to dog on 22 Jump Street, but did you see that's the movie there? That wasn't like some Emmy Award winner or like Oscar winner that everybody's rushing to get to, right? Okay. So you wouldn't have had some afternoon rush trying to get to a movie on a Wednesday at 5 p.m., right? Okay. But you want to get there a little earlier.
I usually do, yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Harris, do you remember if he said what time he was going to get there or anything like that?
I recall him saying he'd be a few minutes late, if that.
And about how long would it take for you to get from Home Depot headquarters to that movie theater, if you can estimate?
5 to 10 minutes.
Okay. So, I'm going to go back to looking at State's Exhibit 331. Okay. You guys started talking on that day. It would have been, we're moving over to now June 18th at, I guess, 13:42, which would have been 9:42 a.m. Would that be right?
Yes, I believe so.
And then times are talked about. Ms. Alex throws out 5 p.m. and 7:35, and then you and Ross both say 5 p.m. would be best.
Yes.
Okay. And let me go back. Looking there after the defendant says, yet tomorrow, we're looking back at June 17th. I believe you stated we should use my Stubbs card. What's a Stubbs card?
It's a rewards card for agency.
And then he suggests, being Mr. Harris, after Wurge, would that be?
Municipal work, yes.
Okay, so he suggested doing it afterward.
Yes.
Going on to the 18th now, you talked a little bit about significant others going. Do you remember that?
I believe so.
Okay. And you believe you stated significant others invited?
Yes.
And then the defendant responds, mine isn't coming, but I don't care, correct?
Yes.
And then you say good because you can't tell Haley you're going to go to a movie without her, right? Is she a big movie fan?
She is.
She would have gotten mad at you if you went without her.
Possibly.
Okay. And later, at 1:09 p.m., again, he said, so we were supposed to be, we were doing the 5 p.m. then. And then the defendant said that would be best. Correct?
Yes.
So at some point, y'all started talking about lunch. Do you remember that? Okay. I'm going to go on these chats, looking at it with, looking up here at, I'm sorry, I got that time wrong earlier. 15:21 would actually be 11:21. So at 11:21, so earlier when I said, just to make sure I'm clear, when I said 1:09, that would have been 11:09 a.m., correct? So you talked about verifying the 5 p.m. movie before lunch.
Yes.
Okay. Now, going to the lunch discussion, Mr. Hall starts it by saying, at boss lunch,
Yes.
question mark. And who is boss?
Ross Harris.
So y'all call him boss sometimes in messaging, and
Yes.
y'all refer to him as that in person too? Is it
Ross.
Ross instead of Ross? Okay. And now there's a discussion about where y'all are going to eat, several suggestions about where you're going to eat, and things like that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And going up there, public subs are mentioned several times.
Yes.
Now, looking at 11:25 on June 18, 2014, defendant says, I might pass on lunch. And then says, if I want to leave by 4:15, 4:30, correct?
Correct.
And then Alex states, I mean, if the movie starts at 5, we can get there at 5:30. And then you said you're going to be getting there earlier, or at least Haley will.
Yes.
Now, when there's further discussion about lunch, y'all ask Ross again, and you state, is might a no?
Yes.
And then he says, sell me. And then you guys start suggesting why Publix is good.
Yes.
Why you should go. It's cheap. Let's see. What else? You can do it in a short amount of time. Those are things trying to sell them on him. Okay, and looking at it at 11:28 a.m., he says, okay, come and get me, and I'm in.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. So basically, he said, if y'all drive, then he'll go.
That's what it says.
I put it now on the first page, on the top right, page 22. You guys are discussing several things about interns and things like that, all on and off during the day, right?
Yes.
Because while you're working, you're still carrying on conversations and chatting and things of that nature.
Correct.
Doesn't look like anything serious or anything like that. Now, at what would have been, let's see, 2:21, that'd be right.
40.
Yes, so that would be 2:21 then. At 14:21 would be.
Oh, yes, excuse me.
So 2:21 p.m. Alex says, "Ross, I'm buying your movie ticket today."
Yes.
So Alex was actually going to buy Ross's ticket.
Most likely, if we're using the Stubbs card and buying ahead of time, it would have been easier for Alex to purchase online with me right next to him.
Okay, great. And so Ross could not have gotten in to the movies until basically y'all would have had to get there and buy the tickets first, right?
I believe we would have bought them ahead of time, but I don't recall if we did that or not this occasion.
Okay. Do you remember discussing the fact that y'all were going to, when you got there and you actually got into the theater, you guys thought that he was going to text you to come out and give him his ticket?
Yes.
Okay. Now, going further, as we get toward the end of that day, you guys are discussing something you go to the next day. You have, was it a work thing that you guys had? Talking about the build day is like right next to my house.
Oh, that would have been Habitat for Humanity.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you guys are planning on doing that the next day. Was that through Home Depot?
Yes.
And so the defendant, you, Alex Hall, all discussing that, and then somebody talks about Outcast tickets being sold out.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at some point in this discussion, the defendant says, okay, you guys get good seats.
Yes.
And then Alex says, I would if A, they weren't sold out, and B, they were 80 for general admission. Looking at the text back and forth, does that get kind of confusing about whether they're talking about movie tickets or the Outcast tickets?
Yes.
Okay. But Alex already said that the Outcast tickets are sold out, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then going up to at 4:09 p.m., the defendant says that he'll be at the theater ASAP, correct?
Yes.
And is that where you got it from that he said he may be late?
Yes.
Now, looking at it at would have been 5:19 p.m., you text him and say, hey, the movie's starting, and y'all start asking Ross, where are you? And then you start communicating about concern, correct?
Yes.
Now, with Ross, was it ordinary or out of the ordinary for him not to respond to messages or phone calls?
It seems strange.
Okay. He usually is pretty good about that, so that kind of stuck out to you.
Yes.
Now, when you guys were going to lunch and throughout that day, the different interactions you had online with him and in person, did anything seem out of the ordinary with the defendant that day?
No.
He didn't seem extra stressed out about anything?
No.
Did he seem sleep deprived or anything of that nature?
Not that I would.
Now, when you picked him up, or not you picked him up, when you were in the car with Alex and going to pick him up, would usually you sit in the front seat and him have to hop in the back?
If we were picking him up, I probably would have been in the front seat for the first part, yes.
It's been kind of weird with you just riding in the back being chauffeured around.
It would have been a fun joke, I guess. But
Yeah. Okay. And so if you remember, on the day in question, on that June 18th, when you guys went to lunch, do you remember where he got in the car when you picked him up, he being the defendant?
Picking him up for lunch most likely would have been in the back.
And where did you guys end up going to lunch?
Publix.
And Publix, is that basically just like a hop, skip, and a jump across from where you worked and where he, the defendant, worked?
Yes.
On that way, do you pass is the Home Depot headquarters off to the right?
Yes, it would be off to the right.
And then can you see the building from there?
Yes.
Okay, and as you're going toward Publix, do you actually also pass the Chick-fil-A on the right?
You do.
Okay, when you got to Publix, are you familiar with that U-turn right there coming out of Chick-fil-A right before you get to Publix?
Yes.
Now, with that U-turn, At that U-turn, do you have traffic coming both at you from the left and from the right from the Publix?
The public street lights a little bit up. Usually people coming out of Publix take a right, but yes, there is an exit there.
Okay. So there's another exit you have with cars coming across that may try to come across and go left and things of that nature if they want to.
Yes.
Okay. So you guys go to Publix. Do you remember how long it took you to get there?
I don't.
Okay. Do you remember how long you ate there?
Probably about 20 or 30 minutes.
Do you remember any discussions at some point about trying to get back so y'all wouldn't be late and get in trouble?
Potentially, but I don't remember what we discussed that day.
Okay. Now, at some point while you were, after you finished eating at Publix, do you remember if you stopped somewhere before Publix?
Not before.
Do you remember where, did you stop somewhere after Publix?
Yes, we stopped at the Home Depot across the street.
And whose idea was it to go to the Home Depot and why?
It was Ross's. I believe he had something to pick up for the house. Light bulbs, I believe.
So you guys stopped by the Home Depot, the store. How close was it to Publix?
It's across the street.
Okay, and it's also across the street from that Chick-fil-A as well?
Yes.
So going into that Home Depot, did he actually purchase the light bulbs?
I believe so, yes.
And after he got the light bulbs, where did y'all go?
We dropped him back off at the treehouse.
Now, when you dropped him back off at the treehouse, do you remember where he asked you to drop him off?
At his vehicle.
Now, when you talked to the police back in 2014, right after this happened, initially, did you tell them about, or did you remember the light bulbs?
It took a minute for me to recall.
Okay. Did you ever forget actually that you dropped him off somewhere other than the front door, though?
I was on my phone, but I believe it was the car. I may have said the front door back then.
Okay. Do you know if you told the police initially, even though you forgot the light bulbs, that you did drop him off somewhere different than the front door?
I don't recall what I spoke to the police about.
Okay, fair enough. Now, dropping off, this was actually, you said you weren't paying attention. You were on your phone, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you weren't the one driving.
No.
These weren't your light bulbs.
No.
Okay. This wasn't your car you had been. Okay. Whose car was this that was being dropped off at?
It would have been Ross's.
Okay. Would it have been your car? Would you had any reason to pay attention to that?
If it had been my car, I would have been getting out of the car.
Okay. If it were the defendant's, would you had any reason to be paying attention?
No.
Okay. Now, Home Depot doesn't have some policy about bringing stuff into the office or anything like that, right?
Not that it depends on what it is, I suppose.
Okay. Well, obviously, like contraband or something. They're like
Probably
probably
have no knives policy, that kind of thing, like most businesses would.
Now, usually when you guys would drop off the defendant back at his office and things like that, would he usually get immediately out and go in, or would he hang out in the car, or do you remember how usually that would go down?
I don't recall.
Okay. When you, that evening, when you left the movies, where did you go?
I left the movies in my vehicle and went to Ross's apartment.
And when you got to Ross's apartment, do you remember seeing anybody else there? Who did you see there?
I went up to the door, knocked on the door, and as I was leaving, I was approached by two officers.
After being approached by the officers, without saying what they told you, what did you do?
I left and went back to my home.
At some point, did you go talk to the police officers the next day?
Yes, I believe it was the next day.
Now, when you talked to the police officers the next day, was it the same ones that had been at the house before, or somebody different, or do you remember?
One of them may have been the same. I remember a female officer at the apartment, but it was male officers I spoke with at the station.
And do you remember when you spoke with the officers at the station, did they show you a photograph and ask you if you recognized somebody?
I believe so. I believe I saw a photograph and possibly some chats of some sort.
This person, did you recognize this person in any way?
I did not.
Did you recognize the screen names being involved at all, either belonging to the defendant or this other person?
I did not.
Okay. You'd never seen her or known anything about this, correct? During the time that you knew him over these years, did the defendant appear to be to get along great with his wife?
Yes.
Would you have had any reason to suspect, or would you have thought, let me ask you this, did you ever witness anything regarding him messaging other women or anything, any problems in his marriage whatsoever?
Not that I recall.
With his family whatsoever?
Not that I recall.
And this was all based on the way he portrayed himself to you when you were around him, correct?
Correct.
Just have a moment, Judge. And Mr. Milling, just,
Sir,
what-
I'm not sure what you said.
thank you. Mr. Milling, now, we've contacted you trying to follow up before since then, right?
Yes.
And as is your right, you've chosen not to speak with us since the day you spoke with the police, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Also said,
You haven't had any contact with Ross Harris since the day he was arrested, have you?
I have not.
You haven't gone to visit him?
I have not.
You haven't sent him any letters?
I have not.
You still have the G-chat from the 17th and the
I
18th?
believe I see it over here, yes, sir.
Okay. Let me go over a couple of things. While they're moving this, let me talk to you a little bit about the interview you had with Detective Murphy and Detective Stoddard on June the 19th. You talked with them 3 days after Cooper died, right?
I don't recall if it was
It
within
was a
24
couple of
hours.
days.
I thought it was the next day, but I could not say for certain.
Okay. And Detective Stoddard over here, this is one of the men that you spoke with. Does that look familiar?
I believe so.
Okay. And they ask you a lot of the same questions that we've gone over today. Is that fair to say?
Many, yes.
And the G-chat that you've identified, y'all had that at the time, right? Because you provided it to me.
I did email this.
All right. All right. Can you get... Mr. Rodriguez, if you could get somewhere around the lunch hour, yeah. Okay. I'm surprised that hadn't happened before. All right, if you could get up around, starting with maybe 15, 21, 34. What time would that be? Yeah, 11:21. Okay, do me a favor and take a look at this. I want you to look at the 18th around 15, 21 hours. And you agree that would actually be 11:21.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And if you can see at 15:21:15,
Yes.
that's kind of when the lunch conversation started that day, right?
Yes.
Boss lunch?
Yes.
Boy, that's hard to say. That's okay. And you agree, there's nothing at all unusual about having a conversation about where y'all going to go to lunch that day? Okay. In fact, that was a conversation had almost every day.
I'd say so, yes.
Not every day, but almost every day.
Nearly.
And y'all had a couple of places that were your favorite places, right?
Yes.
And so at 15:21 in 15 seconds, that's 11:21, Alex throws it out there. Boss, lunch?
Yes.
Question mark. I mean, hey, you want to go to lunch?
Yes.
And what we see is that Ross says, y'all decide. And you say Jim and Nick's, and that's a barbecue place, right?
That is Alex said Jim Nix.
Oh, I'm sorry. And then Ross says $, meaning that's a little bit expensive.
Yes.
Okay. And you say, I just want to fill my belly with warm food.
Yes.
Alex throws out CFA, that's Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
Then he throws out Pub Sub.
Yes.
And you throw out Pub Sub.
Correct.
Why did you throw out Pub Sub if Alex had just thrown it out?
I may have been typing without looking. It was
Okay.
about a 5-second difference.
Okay. So if there's a couple of second difference there, that doesn't mean that you were able to see his response at the time you were typing and then sent it, right?
I most likely may have had it on my screen. I just may not have read it.
Okay. And then Alex says JJ. What's that?
Jimmy Jones.
Jimmy Johns. Okay. And then you say hashtag indecisive or JA. Actually, that's not
Jason Abdo.
It's Jason Abdo. In fact, he's not even on the campus, right?
I didn't believe so, but I don't know.
All right, now we're at 11:24, so we've been talking, y'all been chatting for all of 3 minutes, and Ross says Pub Sub, question mark.
Yes.
Then Abdo says, if I were y'all, TLB all day,
Correct.
meaning Taco Veloz. That's where he would have gone.
That was Vita, yes.
Yeah. And then you say, I can do Publix. Alex says, Publix Sub. Y'all kind of go back and forth, and Ross says, well, we went to TLB yesterday, right? See that?
Did I go the wrong direction?
It actually goes from bottom up.
Yes.
Okay. And then now we're 4 minutes into this, and Ross says, I might pass on lunch if I want to leave by 4:15, 4:30.
Yes.
Okay? And it wasn't an every day or every week kind of thing that y'all were going to go to a movie right after work, right?
I think this might have been the first time we were going to do it after
Okay.
work.
And even for y'all, or Ross, leaving at 4:15 or 4:30 is leaving a little early, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. And so he says, look, I might pass on lunch if I want to leave by 4:15, 4:30.
Yes.
And you didn't find anything remarkable or unusual about that at all, did you? Okay. And you don't know, do you, what projects that Ross had that he was supposed to be finishing on that particular day at work, do you?
I do not.
Okay, you don't know if he had a project that he had been working on during the day, trying to get done, and just couldn't necessarily take an extra hour at lunch.
Don't recall.
Okay. All right, and then we get 2 minutes later, after you've said, y'all kind of sell them up a little bit. Oh, Alex says, I mean, if the movie starts at 5, we can get there at 5:30. And then you say, well, I'm going to get there a little bit earlier, at least my wife will. And then you ask Ross, am I to know? I mean, y'all are trying to convince him to go, right?
Yes.
He says, sell me, go. That's kind of the way y'all talk, right?
Mhm.
That's just kind of some lingo.
Yes.
All right. And so here's your selling point. You say, well, we can do it in a short amount of time. Check the business account. What do you mean by that?
I believe we were still in the process of setting something up. We could have, the mailing box we had was at the UPS store right next to Publix. It's most likely what I've been referring to.
Okay. So you say, we can do it quick. We can run by and check our business box, and it's cheap. Now you coming? He says, Publix? You say yes, and he says, okay, come get me and I'm in.
Yes.
And you didn't find anything at all unusual about that, did you?
No.
The entire conversation about lunch lasted all of, what, 6 minutes there?
Yes.
The whole thing, 6 minutes.
Yes.
And you were asked on direct, if Ross said, if y'all drive, I'll go. He didn't say that, did
He said, come get me.
he? Yeah. Come get me. Take a look back at the day before, on the 17th. On the 17th, which would have been the day before, June 17th, looking at starting at 14:51. You see it, Winston?
14:51.
Yeah. Which would be,
This starts at 21:52. It's the earliest I got.
okay,
Or 21:15.
let me see yours.
It's the last page.
Brian, what number were you on? 36. This has all of the 17. A little bit different format. While we're looking at that, close. You were asked during your interview with the detectives, and you were asked today, was there anything unusual or of note or remarkable about Ross on the 18th? And you said absolutely not. There wasn't anything unusual, right? It was that he was behaving in a normal way, like you had known him for the last year or two, however long y'all been working together.
Yes.
In fact, after this happened, you and Alex got together and you racked your brains trying to think, is there anything that was going on that we missed? And y'all came up with nothing.
Correct.
Okay. So, you had been around Ross the 2 weeks prior to the 18th as well, right?
Yes.
Y'all gone to lunch several times during that period?
I believe so, yes.
And you didn't notice anything unusual or remarkable or any different about him during that 2-week period leading up to Cooper's death either, did you?
No.
You didn't notice that he was on the cusp of some sort of a breakdown during those 2 weeks before the 18th, did you?
Not that I recall.
And you certainly didn't notice it on the 18th.
No.
It was normal.
Correct.
I'm going to show you what we've now marked as Defendant's Exhibit 36.
Okay.
And see if you can identify that it's in a little different format, but it's still the G-chat from June the 17th and June the 18th, 2014. Okay. Oh, yeah. And it also has a little bit of June the 16th as well.
Okay. That shows some times. Yes.
Okay. And does that accurately reflect, to the best of your knowledge and review there, the G-chat that's encompassed within states 331, but also adds a little bit of the 16th of June and all of the 17th of June.
Goes back to a little bit of the 16th, and from what I read, it's the same.
Okay. 36. Move 36. No objection. Take a look at the time period of around, on June the 17th, around 14:51 hours.
It's at 14:51.
14:51 hours.
Yes.
All right. And you see there, Alex, and this is the day before, this is the 17th, right?
Yes.
All right. So the lunch discussion that day goes like this. TLV question mark.
Yes.
And again, Alex, start the conversation, says the same thing. Boss, Jason?
Yes.
Meaning, hey, what do you guys want to do? Ross says, I think so.
Yes.
And what does Alex say right after that?
I can drive, but I need to go to Best Buy after.
Now, where's Best Buy?
Electronics retailer right near Taco Studio.
Okay. So it's not necessarily unheard of, but sometimes y'all run errands during lunch.
No.
In fact, the very day before, apparently Alex had to go to Best Buy.
Yes.
Okay. And then right after that, you see Ross says, okay, yeah, I can. TLV it is. And then what does he say?
Just come get me whenever.
Just come get me whenever. So there's certainly nothing remarkable or unusual or out of ordinary for Ross to say, hey, y'all come get me.
No.
Happened all the time.
Yes.
All right, so when you were questioned by police and they were asking you about what y'all had done that day, do you remember that conversation, or have you had a chance to listen to your interview again?
I have not listened to my interview.
You've not had a chance to listen to it? Okay. Do you recall that when you were questioned about what y'all had done that day, that you neglected to tell the officers that y'all had gone by to check your mailbox at the UPS store?
I honestly don't know if we actually did or did not go by it.
Don't know if you did or not.
Correct.
Okay. Do you remember that you neglected to tell the detectives that y'all had stopped at a Home Depot store after you went to Publix
Correct.
and gone in and bought light bulbs?
Correct. I didn't recall it at that time.
Right. And this was, you think, maybe 2 days after Cooper died?
I don't recall the exact timeline, but it sounds about right.
Okay. And you would agree that in that 48 hours or however long it was between the time that, the time we're talking about here, you weren't under arrest.
No.
You had not lost a child.
No.
You weren't facing the prospect of having to tell your wife what you had done.
No.
But you forgot to tell the detective about stopping by the Home Depot store.
Correct.
And you didn't just stop. You actually got out of the car and went into the Home Depot store when Ross bought light bulbs.
Correct.
Were you trying to mislead the officer?
I was not.
You just forgot.
Yes.
Until he reminded you.
Correct.
And then you remember.
I did.
Okay. All right. Do you know who Brandon Moore is?
Name does not recall.
Okay. Do you know if Ross went to lunch with other people besides you and Alex and Jason?
Potentially, yes.
Potentially? Okay. Because y'all didn't go every day.
Yeah,
So he may have gone with Brandon more on days that you don't know about.
correct.
All right. Do you know about Ross ever going to visit Cooper during the day?
I'm not aware
You're not aware?
of any instance. No.
All right. So if Ross went over and visited Cooper at Little Aprons, that was something that he didn't share with you?
No, the only thing I can think of is every once in a while they do like a parade. The kids have like little floats and whatnot. That could be the only thing. Other than that, we have an IT picnic. That would have been the only other thing. But that's a special occasion, not a kind of day-to-day out normal thing.
What did y'all talk about at Publix when you went and had lunch?
I don't recall any specifics of the conversation.
Wasn't anything that stuck out that was remarkable, that was different? They asked you about Ross, and you told them that Ross is a happy guy. He's always showing Cooper off.
Correct.
Said he's always bringing his kid around. What does that mean?
I was most likely thinking of something like the IT picnic, which I believe was fairly recent before that, where Ross was carrying him around, showing him off to everybody at the SSC that normally wouldn't see him.
You certainly never heard Ross complain about Cooper in any way.
Yeah.
All right, you were asked if you knew that Ross interviewed at Chick-fil-A.
That was.
Okay, and do you have some actual memory that he had interviewed or talked to somebody at Chick-fil-A?
Memory is a difficult thing. If you mention it, it sounds familiar, but I can't say for certain.
Okay. And in your line of work, it's not at all unusual in the IT world for people to move from job to job, is it?
No.
In fact, you told the officers that when you were interviewed. You remember telling them that, yeah, he may have interviewed at Chick-fil-A, putting out feelers. Recruiters call us almost every day.
They do, yes.
It's part of the business.
Yes.
Well, you don't see anything unusual about that, do you?
I do not.
The business that y'all were in together, it was in the very beginning stages.
Yes.
Okay, but Ross had actually put a lot of work into the business, hadn't he?
Yeah.
He had sort of set up the LLC.
We had set it up together. He and Jason kind of took point in negotiations with the potential first client. They had some prior relation with him.
Okay. Y'all called him boss.
Yes.
That wasn't because he was older, was it?
Kind of rhymed with the name type thing.
Boss.
Yeah.
Okay. Was it because he was kind of the, sort of the, I don't want to say figurehead, but he was sort of the head guy in sort of trying to move y'all's business along, get it up and running?
He was the only one with prior experience.
Okay. And you remember telling the detectives Ross was excited about the new business?
Yes.
And he was.
Yes.
You remember being asked if Ross had ever made statements about living a life without children?
I don't recall being asked.
Okay. But you never remember Ross making any such statements, do you?
I do not.
And you were asked quite a bit about the movie, who suggested it or whatnot. You didn't find anything remarkable about the fact that Ross suggested going to a movie after work one day.
No.
Okay. All you guys were sort of movie junkies.
Yes.
Fair to say?
Very fair in my case.
And 21 or 22 Jump Street or whatever it is, that's sort of a juvenile, sophomoric kind of movie.
Very much so.
Y'all were all pretty excited about going to see it, right?
Yes.
It's kind of right up y'all's alley, fair to say?
Yes.
And looking at those G-chats, as soon as Ross suggested it, Alex was like, hell yes, right?
Yes.
Like, caps. He was,
I don't remember the intonation in text.
okay, fair enough. But you certainly didn't find anything or don't find anything remarkable or unusual about the fact that Ross suggested y'all go over it?
No.
All right, and you, had you been to that AMC Parkway point before?
Many times.
All right. There's a couple of ways to get there?
There are, yes.
All right. The area that we're talking about, and these folks live here in Glenn County, this theater is off of Highway 41, right?
I don't know the name. It's 75 and 285 kind of in that general area.
It's fair to say this is a massive traffic area.
Yes, there's a lot of traffic.
Okay. And at 4:30 in the afternoon, traffic could be a monster just to get through the traffic light.
Yes,
Might actually have to wait a couple of lights to get through a light.
potentially, yes.
And it wasn't just Ross that was going to leave earlier, try to leave early to get there, was it?
No.
Y'all all talked about it in there. Y'all all were going to try to leave early to get there, right?
Correct.
Right. Some of us don't care when we get there, as long as we see the beginning of the movie. You guys like to see the trailers and the previews, and get your popcorn, and get your drink, and get seated, right?
Seats primarily, yes.
In fact, y'all had even talked ahead of time about getting snacks before you even went to the movie.
Potentially, I don't recall, but
Because for y'all, this is an experience. You don't want to be late.
correct.
Okay? So you don't see anything remarkable or odd about the fact y'all all left early to try to get to the movie.
No.
Do me a favor and please take a look at the 18th at about 3:44 in the afternoon.
344 would be 1744. Excuse me.
15. 16:44.
1944.
That sounds right. On the 18th.
Yes.
You see it?
I assume we want to carpool first line.
Yeah.
Yes, I see it.
At 3:44 in the afternoon on the 18th, Ross is sending out a Jeep chat to y'all about future plans, isn't he?
Yes.
About carpooling together for something the very next day.
Yes. Habitat building.
Okay, that's where y'all are going to go. Habitat.
Yes.
And you're going to go together.
Yes.
And Ross is the one that throws out there, hey guys, we need to carpool.
Yes.
Making future plans.
Correct.
Fair to say?
Yes.
You've never heard Ross talk about living child-free, have you?
No.
You've never known him to join in any groups advocating living child-free, have you?
Not that I'm aware of.
You've never heard him espouse any philosophy about living a child-free lifestyle.
I don't know.
But you have been witness to him being a very engaged, loving parent, haven't you?
I have.
Thank you, Winston.
Okay. Let me just clear up one thing. The day of the 17th, when Mr. Kilgore, well, it's a little bigger on this one, asked you about, what's on this? When he asked you about the defendant's statement saying, come get me, on the 17th, the day before, that was after Alex had actually volunteered to drive, correct?
I'd have to read over
Okay,
it.
let me go back to it. Make sure we get it right. Okay. Where he says earlier, I can drive, Alex does, but I need to go to Best Buy after, correct?
Yes.
And then he, after he's volunteered, Ross, the defendant, just says, just come get me whenever.
He does.
Okay. Now, earlier when I was on direct, the first thing I had you do was actually, we read what it said, correct? I didn't just come out and say, yes, I actually read what it said, correct?
Correct.
And when I went over it after that with you, the obvious reading of that is, the defendant conditioned, I will go if you come get me, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the defense asked you about if you thought there were any projects or things like that that he may need to be working on or maybe stressed out. You remember that line of questioning by defense counsel?
I do.
Okay. And you remember the defendant saying earlier in the chat messages that, he may not go to lunch because he wanted to leave early, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But y'all went to lunch and he didn't voice any concerns about piddling around, going to UPS store and things like that, correct?
Not that I recall.
And it was actually his idea to go to Home Depot and buy some stuff, right?
Correct.
So he obviously didn't seem to be in a hurry to get back from lunch. Would you agree with that? I'll ask you. Did he appear to be in any hurry to get back from lunch to finish some project?
Not that I recall.
And if he had a strict deadline for that day, something he was stressed out about, would it have been a good idea to leave work early to go see 22 Jump Street?
Also speculation.
I don't believe that.
Argumentative.
I'm sorry?
It's argumentative.
Okay. Would that have been consistent with needing to finish a project that day?
I don't recall his work schedule enough to know.
Okay. But he didn't say anything to you about a deadline that day or anything like that, right?
Not that I recall.
He was planning to leave early.
Correct.
Regarding the Chick-fil-A job, were you aware that he was upset he didn't get the job?
I don't recall.
Okay, so that would have been something that he may not have shared with you.
Possibly not.
And he told you he loved his wife.
Yes.
And then did he ever hear him complain about Leanna?
Not that I recall.
And you stated he never said anything bad to you or anything about Cooper to you that was in any way negative, correct?
Correct.
On June 18, 2014, he didn't say to you that he needed an escape from his son, did he?
No.
Okay, you were asking questions about the dropping off of the car. Now, or stopping by Home Depot. When you were asked by the police, this was the day after, right? Cooper's death?
I believe it was.
Okay. And this was, unfortunately, this wasn't your child. I mean, unfortunately, this was the defendant's child, correct?
Correct.
And this was the defendant who had actually chosen and asked to go to Home Depot to buy light bulbs, right?
Correct.
And whose car was it that you went back to drop off those light bulbs?
Whose car were we in?
Whose car did you go to? And
It would have been to Ross's car.
okay, did you ever get out?
I did not.
Okay, so while you didn't mention Home Depot, do you remember mentioning to the detectives that you did drop him off somewhere different than the front door?
I believe so.
Okay, and you also weren't the one who went into that car, were you?
No.
I believe the defense counsel asked you some questions about the going to the movie theater. You said on direct that it's a straight line to the movie theater if you go down Cumberland. And then he said there could be other ways you would go, right?
Potentially, yes.
And it can be a high traffic area, right?
Cumberland, that main road, is a fairly busy road many days.
However, if you turn left and go over there by the mall area is busier than that, correct?
They're about the same.
So you go over, if you take a left on Acres Mill, that takes you beside the mall. Is that right?
I don't recall what Acres Mill Road is, to be honest.
Okay. Do you remember that Cumberland road, the one that's a straight shot to the movie theater?
Yes.
That was not populated by businesses, restaurants, things like that?
Yeah, it's access to the mall. We go, there's a burrito place nearby there, but it's mostly large offices.
Okay. And do you remember when you spoke to a defense investigator a couple of days? Do you remember speaking to a defense investigator a couple of days after you spoke to the police?
I may have, but I don't recall it off the top of my head.
Okay. Was it unusual for y'all to drop the defendant off at his car?
I don't recall one way or the other. I mean, we dropped him off at the building. It would not be strange to me for him to ask to go to the car or the front door.
Do you remember telling investigators that it was unusual for you to drop him off at the car?
Don't recall what I said to the investigators.
If you told the investigators that back a day or two after this, would that have been a better memory than it is here today about whether it would have been unusual or usual to be dropped off at the car?
It may be, yes.
It would be better back then?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. And just, when's the last time you've spoken with defense counsel or anybody on their behalf?
I called defense counsel in regards to logistics for being here, but I have not really spoken to either side since early on.
Since this, a couple of days after this happened?
Yes.
Okay, you don't want to be here today, do you? Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
I don't have any further questions.
You're free to go. Let's take an afternoon break, ladies and gentlemen. Close your notepads, take them with you. Keep an open mind. Don't discuss the matter. Enjoy each other's company.